So thanks for the introduction. Yeah, my name's Gemma Hyde. I work for the Town and Country Planning Association. We're actually a charity that is hoping to help create places, homes and communities in which everyone can thrive. And we do that by thinking about the planning system, but also thinking about, well, actually, if you're going to make a great place, it's got to be dealing with lots more things than just the planning system. So it's thinking in a really holistic way. Sorry, there we go. So what I want to talk to you today is about a new neighbourhood planning toolkit that we have developed, and it is focused on complete, compact and connected places, and thinking about how that works for people, and hoping that that provides a framework, a really positive framework for people to be able to think about making neighbourhood plans. I appreciate not everyone on the call is from England, so the sort of principles and the things we're going to talk about apply in the other areas of the UK, but the guide itself is written sort of in the context of the English planning system, so it's just worth bearing that in mind. So why are we thinking about this? So the TCPA are concerned that lots of places, although they may be very different in nature, are actually facing very similar problems. And a lot of these problems are interconnected. And it might be that we've got places that are suffering from high areas of congestion or air pollution, the food environments that people have access to and that they're living in are not great. They don't have access to healthy food, or that healthy food is not affordable. We're seeing the impacts of climate change. We've got sort of issues around social isolation and loneliness and mental health issues. We've got people not being physically active and not getting the physical health benefits from that. We may have places that aren't allowing people to access green infrastructure, be that parks, it might just be street trees, thinking about allotments, I know that's been mentioned already, and also thinking about access to play space if you're a child. And we've got issues around pavements, which I know is always a big issue as well. So what makes us healthy? Well, actually, the environments in which we live make us healthy. So we often think about health, especially in terms of planning, as thinking about, well, we need to plan for the hospital and the GP surgery. But actually, what keeps and makes us healthy is the environments that we live in. And planning has a really important role to play with that. There's a phrase that Lord Nigel Crisp, who we do some work with, uses quite a lot, and that is, health is made at home and hospitals are for repairs. And it's no good if we're sort of spending all this money on the NHS and patching people up and then sending them back into unhealthy environments. So we really need to be thinking about creating healthier environments in which people can live longer, healthier and happy lives. So we've been thinking about this for about 10 years. And one of the ways that we start to try and make this a reality and help people think about it is to think about the 20-minute neighbourhood concept, or the 15-minute neighbourhood concept, or the 15-minute city concept, or complete communities. There's lots and lots of language that we could use around this. But really what we're talking about is creating places that allow people to live locally more of the time. So that means we need to think in a really holistic way about the services and facilities that people need for their everyday lives, and how can we bring those closer to where people live. And that's going to look different in every place. In an urban sort of area, that will look very different to a rural area. And there's lots to sort of unpack in that about, do you bring the service to the people, or do you ask people to travel to the service, and how they're going to do that? But the basic concept is about living locally more of the time. And that creates healthier, more active people. And it means that people have the genuine choice to just walk to the shop, or to cycle to the shop, or wheel to the shop in some way, which increases their activity. It means they're much more likely to bump into their neighbour and have a chat and feel socially connected. So it's a really simplistic way of thinking about, actually, how do we help people to live locally more of the time? And lots of places have been doing this for quite a long time. So Paris is a very famous example, Melbourne in Australia, and Scotland have been forging ahead as well, thinking about this. So in 2021, we published a guide for local authority council planners thinking about this. and we've since sort of spent a lot of time promoting the idea and having the conversation. And it's really about thinking about proximity and helping people to live locally, and then the benefits that also has for the environment. So if we're reducing car trips, then we're also going to be talking about mitigating climate change and global warming as well. So in our framework for thinking about this, we have identified these 8 features, and it's not the answer to everything. It's not the complete model, but it is a way to start thinking about place. So it's really important, for example, that people have homes that are safe, energy efficient, that are affordable, that they have security of tenure. So each one of these features you could sort of spend quite a lot of time unpacking. But what it does is it provides a framework or a way to start a conversation, to think about place, how people experience it, and how to make it sort of more complete, compact and connected. So what we've done and launched just this week, so hot off the press, is think about how this might apply to neighbourhood planning. So this is the sort of principle which I've already touched upon, about making it sort of easy for people to access the day-to-day facilities and services that they need. And then this is just lots and lots more information on our website that you can go and see. And I know the slides are going to be shared, so you'll be able to sort of pick up on some of these web addresses and stuff. So in terms of neighbourhood planning, communities have the right to plan. That's set out in the Locality Act. And what it means is that you can create a document that helps you to understand and create a vision for your community, helps you to develop policies that can be used when planning applications come forward in your area. So the document has weight in the planning process and can help planning officers make decisions. And it can also then move beyond that and articulate community projects and priorities, which are not so important in the planning decisions, but are really important in terms of helping to shape places over the longer term. And it will help you to sort of create and maintain your key partnerships in terms of creating the environments that your places and communities are living in. Why do we think neighbourhood planning is a good thing? Well, one of the main reasons at the moment is that you may or may not know, but nationally there's a lot of planning reform being proposed, and that's creating quite a lot of instability in the planning system. But neighbourhood planning seems quite a stable vehicle for thinking about, well, how do we influence what's going on in areas, and how to bring through the decisions that are going to make positive impacts on our environments. So if you're interested or making a neighbourhood plan, then keep at it, because I think it's actually a really good way of having really good sort of local influence and control over what's going on in your area. So the neighbourhood planning toolkit. So as I mentioned, we've launched it this week. It's available on our website, and it's free to access. We've written it in collaboration with the University of Manchester. And what it does is it sort of, hopefully in a really sort of practical way, explains the 20-minute neighbourhood concept. It provides examples of tools for community engagement and collaboration, which is a really important part of where you start with making a neighbourhood plan. It provides a framework to consider what your policy themes that you might want to include in your neighbourhood plan. It then provides examples of policy that's been made and adopted from other places to give you sort of wording ideas and inspiration, and then discusses community projects and partnerships. So the first thing that it sort of tackles is this idea that you're going to need to think about the evidence base for your plan, and what it is that your community is interested in, and what the needs are, and how are you going to find that out. So it lists the number of tools that you could use to sort of start that process and that activity. I'm not going to go through them all. They are sort of listed in the toolkit itself. I will just mention the Place Standard tool, which has been developed by the Scottish Government. And it's a way of sort of asking questions over 14 key areas to think about, well, actually, how do people experience place in terms of moving around, in terms of all sorts of things. And it can be things about infrastructure and physical environment, but also how they feel about it. So what influences their behaviours? Do they feel safe? And all of those sorts of issues as well. So it's a really great tool. It's free. There's a whole toolkit itself on how to use it, but really worth taking a look at if you're thinking about engaging with your community about the environment or the village or the town or the area that you're living in. And what it does is it produces this sort of map so that you can look at, well, here are the gaps and here are the places where perhaps things are looking stronger. So within the R toolkit, the policy themes that you might want to consider are set out, and we've sort of moved them beyond our original sort of 20-minute neighbourhoods framework that we developed in 2021, and I think that reflects the recognition that life moves quite quickly in terms of what we should be thinking about in terms of creating places. So you can see them listed there. So it covers homes, access to healthier food, green spaces, community facilities, how people move around your area and transport, retail, commerce, local employment, so covering sort of local economy issues, health and well-being, places for all ages, and digital connectivity. And what that looks like in the guide is this. So there's a rationale. So for homes, it sets out the rationale for why we need to be thinking about this, and that sort of language you could pick up and pop down into your plan, and then it sets out examples of planning policies that have been usually made and adopted in neighbourhood plans in England. Occasionally the wording we've taken is from an emerging neighbourhood plan, so that means it's not been tested, but we think that actually the wording that they're proposing to use is still really good and innovative and worth including. So underneath homes, for example, there might be policies around housing design, policies around, well, actually, how do we meet local housing need, policies around the need for some areas to try and impose a local connection. So where new homes are being built, how do we ensure that actually local people have first dibs, if you like, on those new homes? And thinking about how we create homes that are energy efficient and those sorts of issues. And then another example, I've just put there. So the rationale and then the policy examples, my apologies. And then another example would be places for all ages. So knowing that, actually successful places are ones in which people can choose to spend their whole lives, because we're meeting the needs of all age groups and life stages. And in that section, there's policies around creating dementia-friendly environments, making provision for young people, and then also thinking about housing types and need for older people or people with disabilities. So each of those policy themes, that's how it's sort of set out. So the rationale and then policy examples. And that's really to give you an idea of what's possible, and then you can take that and you can then tailor that to the needs in your area. Talking about young people, one of the sort of complementary pieces of work that the TCPA have done in recent years has also been to create a toolkit about involving young people in the making and managing of their neighbourhoods. Again, it's free to download and use, and it's just a way of thinking about, well, how are we going to engage the young people in our place, in our town, in our village, in our area, to think about what they need and where the opportunities are for them to sort of get involved in the plan making process, or in the process of regenerating a play park, for example, or a community facility. And then neighbourhood plans can sort of go beyond policies about land use and development. So you will have planning policies, but then you can also start to have a list of sort of local community priorities and projects that aren't going to be dealt with through planning applications coming forward, but are things that are still locally important. So that might be around making sure that new development connects really well to the existing ways of moving around your place. And then you can also sort of outline actually where you will be able to access developer contributions from new development coming forward, where those are going to get spent, and how the funding might be allocated, to make sure that actually the benefits of new development are then shared across the community. And it also lists thinking about sort of all those key partnerships and collaborations. So again, the neighbourhood plan can't necessarily influence public transport provision, but you can, by stating a partnership with your local transport authority, and sort of set out your priority, so that it's sort of set out in an adopted document. And then when the transport authorities are also thinking and making plans, they can refer back to it, and hopefully some of these threads start to then come together and work together to create better places for everybody. There is a slightly different version of the toolkit available, which is focused especially on transport decarbonisation. This was done by the University of Manchester as well, and it's a slightly more focused set of ideas. So you could sort of dip in and out of both if you were really interested locally in decarbonisation. But what happens is that you start to think about that, and you start to think about the need for actually creating compact neighbourhoods, which is at the bottom of that list. And so it's an important part, but actually the 20-minute neighbourhood concept, or creating complete, compact and connected places, is just a slightly more holistic way of thinking about the same things, and thinking about those sort of, and how they interrelate and how they work together. There is lots and lots of info about 20-minute neighbourhoods on our website, including a whole series of webinars which are free to go back and view. There are webinars about connection. There's one webinar about rural expressions of 20-minute neighbourhoods. So sort of no matter what sort of area type you are working in and living in, there's sort of lots to be explored. And we're always happy to sort of be contacted and start to talk to people about some of this stuff. And I should also just say that the Town and Country Planning Association, we're a charity, but we're also a membership organisation. So if you sort of thinking about this, taking a look at some of this information, and you'd like to think about joining us, then that would be brilliant from our point of view. And then you get sort of benefits of being an organisational member or an individual member, including sort of access to our journal. You have access to events and things, and discounted prices on conferences, etc. So I won't go too hard on the sales pitch, but yeah, if you're sort of thinking that our values match yours and you're interested, then please do consider joining us as well.